So my adult fiction list starts with The Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. And this book I've actually tried reading a few times. And the biggest thing for me with Terry Pratchett is there's so many things going on, and because it's in Discworld, and the whole concept of Discworld is that it's riding on the back of a tortoise is two elephants, or sitting on a disc, I think, in the universe, in space, is a disc and then two elephants and a tortoise, and then the Earth sits on top of that. So that's floating through space. And it's a very silly universe. And so this one is about the Hogfather, and the Hogfather is basically Death? Is he? No, he's Santa Claus. The Hogfather is Santa Claus. So the back of this says, "It's the night before Hogswatch and it is too quiet. Where is the big jolly fat man? Why is Death creeping down chimneys and trying to say ho ho ho? The darkest night of the year is getting a lot darker. Susan, the Gothic governess, has got to sort it out by morning, otherwise there won't be a morning, ever again." The 20th Discworld novel is a festive feast of darkness and death, but with jolly robins and tinsel too. As they say, you better watch out. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting characters in here. There's a character called Teatimi, Mr. Teatimi, which is Mr. Tea Time. It's spelled Tea Time. It's one of my favorite characters in this book. There's these underground people who, it's like a mafia kind of, or assassins, but they're very nice assassins, and so they kind of catch you off guard. And Death is very funny. He's hilarious. And so, yeah, this one I'd actually like to finish this year. The next book on my fiction list is House Rules by Jodi Picoult. And this book is about Jacob Hunt. He's a teen with Asperger's syndrome. He's hopeless at reading social cues or expressing himself well to others, though he is brilliant in many ways. But he has a special focus on one subject, forensic analysis. A police scanner in his room clues him into crime scenes, and he's always showing up and telling the cops what to do, and he's usually right. But when Jacob's small hometown is rocked by a terrible murder, law enforcement comes to him. Jacob's behaviors are hallmark Asperger's, but they look a lot like guilt to the local police. Suddenly, the Hunt family, who only want to fit in, are directly in the spotlight. For Jacob's mother, Emma, it's a brutal reminder of the intolerance and misunderstanding that always threaten her family. For his brother, Theo, it's another indication why nothing is normal because of Jacob. And over the small family, the soul-searing question looms. Did Jacob commit murder? So, yeah, I started this one, and it was actually really interesting. I just never got all the way through it. There's a little review on the front that says, "Picoult writes with unassuming brilliance," and it's by Stephen King, so it must be good, because he's a good writer, and he wouldn't lie. Another book I bought in the last year, because I was starting to be interested in classics as I was wanting to broaden my horizons with reading, is Moby Dick. And this book is deceivingly small. So it's quite a thin book, but if you open it, it's very, very small writing. So I'm a little intimidated by this one. I do want to read it because I want to know what everybody's talking about when they talk about classics. And so it would be a good goal to finish this. So, Moby Dick by Herman Melville. The next book I actually got from my stepmom, and it's called The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. And she was giving away a bunch of books, and so I got this one. I don't know a lot about it, so I'll read the back. Handing the manuscript of The Golden Notebook to publishers and friends, I learned that I had written a tract about the sex war, and fast discovered that nothing I said then could change that diagnosis. But this novel was not a trumpet for women's liberation. It described many female emotions of aggression, hostility, and resentment. It put them into print. Apparently, what many women were thinking, feeling, experiencing came as a great surprise. Instantly, a lot of very ancient weapons were unleashed. And then it also says, somewhere between emancipation and liberation were free women. And so, yeah, this book looks very interesting. It came with a good review, and so I'm interested. The next book is Charles Dickens by David Copperfield. And this is going along with my want to read classics. This book is very thick, and it's also quite small. The text is not as small as Moby Dick, so it's not quite as intimidating. Oh my goodness, the book's not Charles Dickens. The book is called David Copperfield, and the author is Charles Dickens. And I started it. I actually got to page 15. This book takes a lot of dissecting on my part, because I don't understand it initially, and so I start reading some, and then I realize that I don't get it, and so I'll either look up what a particular phrase means, because I'm not that familiar with Old English, and so it's a bit of a challenge in that way. I would like to get through it, because I would actually like to learn what happens and go through getting through a full Charles Dickens book and experiencing it, because I really do enjoy the writing style. It's beautiful. It's a piece of art. Every page, I learn so many new things about Old English, and I learn about the style, and I learn about these characters. It's just a bit slow, so I think it's going to take me a while, but I definitely want to get through this one. So, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, not Charles Dickens by David Copperfield. I can laugh at myself. Okay, the next book is called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, and this is actually all 4 books, which saves me from getting the other ones. It makes it difficult to carry around, but that's why it is so big. I think Hitchhiker's actually ends right here, so that's 1 book. So that's actually not that intimidating. So if I made a goal to read this in a month, that would be a good thing, or, by the end of the year, like all of these books, that would be pretty cool. This book is really entertaining. Douglas Adams is a hilarious writer. I've read snippets before. I've seen the movie a while ago. I also did a Dungeons and Dragons game based on the book a while ago, like probably when I was a teenager or younger. And so I really like the universe that it's in. I'm going to read from the back. Charting Arthur Dent's Odyssey through space are The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One Thursday lunchtime, the Earth gets unexpectedly demolished to make way for a new hyperspace bypass. For Arthur Dent, who has only just had his house demolished that morning, this seems already to be more than he can cope with. Sadly, however, the weekend has only just begun, and the galaxy is a very strange and startling place. And the people he meets and his character are very cool. There's phrases like, don't forget your towel, because you always need a towel, and 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Both of those come from this book, or this trilogy of 4, because that makes a lot of sense. So I would like to get through this. It would also give me nerd points to finally finish this, so I can understand all the references to this lovely book, or these lovely books. So that's another one on my list. Next on my list of adult fiction is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. And I got this book because I heard it was really good from a friend of mine at the time. It also was a movie that I never did see, but I wanted to see the movie. But before I see the movie, I'd like to read the book. I don't know how to describe it, so I'm going to read the book back for you. Jonathan Safran Foer emerged as one of the most original writers of his generation with his best-selling debut novel. Everything is illuminated. Now with humor, tenderness, and awe, he confronts the traumas of our recent history. 9-year-old Oscar Schell has embarked on an urgent secret mission that will take him through the 5 boroughs of New York. His goal is to find the lock that matches a mysterious key that belonged to his father, who died in the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th. This seemingly impossible task will bring Oscar into contact with survivors of all sorts on an exhilarating, affecting, often hilarious, and ultimately healing journey. So, I personally like books where the characters have to go through a lot, and The Fault in Our Stars is one of my favorite books for that reason, because it's a real journey for the main character. And this one, the protagonist, it sounds like, especially as a 9-year-old, going through his father not being alive and going through the search for this lock. This one sounds very intense and very interesting. The next one is actually a book that one of my favorite movies is made after. The Time Traveler's Wife. I absolutely love this movie. It's amazing. I believe it's Rachel McAdams. She's absolutely incredible in this movie. And so the concept of this is there's basically a guy who can time travel, and what happens to him is, it's not so much that he can time travel, he does time travel at will. And so he can be just doing something, and then suddenly he'll time travel to a different time. And the thing about him time traveling is he always goes to a different place, and he's naked when he time travels. So the first thing he does when he time travels is he has to find clothes. And then basically he can do whatever he wants while he's time traveling. If he steals, if he commits violence, if he does anything whatsoever, the slate is wiped clean as soon as he time travels again. And the thing that happens is he time travels to a certain time where he meets a girl, as a young girl, and they develop a relationship while she's young and he's older than her, probably about 15 years older than her. And then he time travels back as she's growing up, and they actually get into the same time where they're both the same age. And I think there's like a 15-year difference still, but with her being 20 and him being 35, it's actually fine. And it's about their story and how they go through all the trials and tribulations of him time traveling and what it's like for her to be left behind, and are they going to be together long term or not, and all the things of that. And I absolutely love the movie. And I got about, how many pages? 50 pages into it. The book's a little bit slow for me because the movie is very suspenseful, and I know what happens in the movie, and so it's hard for me to drive myself to read this. But I do want to find out because I know there's probably differences, and I know that books often end different than movies. So that's why it's on my list. Another book on my list is In the Skin of a Lion by Michael Ondaatje. And this is another book from my stepmom. She was getting rid of a bunch of books, and so, like the Doris Lessing one, I grabbed this one as well. It's reflective and tender, muscular and erotic. In the Skin of a Lion weaves real and invented histories with a moving love story set in the Toronto of the 20s and 30s. Both the harsh world of labor and the magical theater of human heart are hauntingly entwined. So it sounds interesting. I've heard good things about the author, Michael Ondaatje. And yeah, the reason why I got this book is also to broaden my reading horizons. And so, yeah, it's on my list. This book I really want to read, much like The Time Traveler's Wife. I love the movie of this, Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And it's about this woman who's married, and then she decides that she needs to find herself, and so she basically goes on a worldwide journey, and it's how she becomes, how she gets grounded by all these different places, because she goes to Italy, India, she goes to Bali, and she learns about herself, and the people that she meets really bring her to appreciate human spirit and bring her back into herself, which is what she had lost in her relationship with her husband. And yeah, as I said, the movie's really good. Julia Roberts is in it, and I like Julia Roberts. But I want to read this because I want to see how different it is, much in the same way of The Time Traveler's Wife. Another book that this is a trend, another book that I like the movie of is The Help by Catherine Stockett. And it's a very powerful movie in looking at African American women and how women of the 1960s in Mississippi or in the southern United States, how they didn't actually look after their children, and they trusted looking after their children to nannies, but they didn't call them nannies, they called them the help because they helped the family out, which I find a little derogatory, so I have to kind of understand that this is a period piece of the time and looking at what came before, and it really shows how much our society has progressed. There's a fair way to go in certain parts of the world, but overall there's a lot of progression in the world since this. I will read the back in case you're unfamiliar with this book. Aibileen is a black maid in 1962 Jackson, Mississippi, raising her 17th white child. She's always taken orders quietly, but lately it leaves her with a bitterness she can no longer bite back. Her friend Minnie has certainly never held her tongue or held on to a job for very long, but now she's working for a newcomer with secrets that leave her speechless. So yeah, it's basically her relationship with the child she's raising and her relationship with her community as a African American woman in 1962 Mississippi, and then how she's treated and what she basically has to put up with. And so yeah, I want to get through that one as well. I also started it. This one is a little tough for me too because it's from Abileen's perspective and it's written in the broken English that she has. And so I like that because it puts me in her perspective, but it's a challenge to get through because it's not a straight through read. Sometimes I don't understand what she means, and so yeah, The Help is definitely one I want to read. Next one is Keeping Faith by Jodi Picoult. This one is a bit of a out of the box kind of, it's spiritual. It's a spiritual book, and I'm fascinated by the subject matter in it. I will read the jacket to you. One of America's most powerful and thought-provoking novelists, #1 New York Times bestselling author Jodi Picoult brilliantly examines belief, miracles, and the complex core of family. When the marriage of Mariah White and her cheating husband Colin turns ugly and disintegrates, their 7-year-old daughter Faith is there to witness it all. In the aftermath of a rapid divorce, Mariah falls into a deep depression, and suddenly Faith, a child with no religious background whatsoever, hears divine voices, starts reciting biblical passages, and develops stigmata. And when the miraculous healings begin, mother and daughter are thrust into the volatile center of controversy and into the heat of a custody battle, trapped in a mad media circus that threatens what little stability the family has left. So, I'm personally fascinated by the concept of channeling and different people's experience of it. And so this book is really, really cool for that. It's a new perspective, and yeah, I started it and I never got through it. I don't see a trend, do you? I got to page 78, and it's very interesting, so I want to finish that one. The last one of my fiction to be read shame list is Cloud's End by Sean Stewart. This is another one I got passed on to me when my stepmom was getting rid of books. I don't know very much about this book at all. It was recommended to me of, oh hey, you might like this book. And so, with haunting prose and unforgettable images, Sean Stewart weaves an extraordinary fable of a world where myths come to light and reality is just beyond reach. Cloud's End tells the story of Brooke, a young woman living on an island near the edge of the mist, whose destiny washes up on the shore of her in the form of her twin. They are two women of one soul. They must embark on a journey between two realms, the unreachable sky and the unfathomable sea. This beautifully crafted novel reaffirms that Sean Stewart is an author whose talent is both obvious and subtle, a new voice as distinctive as any in San Francisco? SF. I'm assuming San Francisco. So, yeah, those are my TBR shame lists. I hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you so much for getting this far.